Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be here once again to host the third annual Manifest Women's Lunch. And before I say anything else, I have to thank the men for joining us. So important that you're here. Thank you so much. Okay, so a couple of factoids. I know many of you are familiar with some of these types of stats, but I just feel I need to share some of this. So recently, a BlackRock study of the MSCI World Index Fund has found that companies with more gender-balanced workforces outperformed their least balanced peers by as much as 2 percentage points annually between 2013 and 2022. 2% may not sound like a lot, it's a lot, especially if you're a big company. Another study revealed that European venture capital funds with greater number of women in top leadership roles saw improved financial performance. Specifically, funds managed by mixed gender teams reported a higher annual internal rate of return, and teams predominantly composed of women outperformed all male teams by a notable 9.3%. Very notable. And it's striking because only 9% of the VC firms in Europe are run by women. Okay, and for the supply chain space, we know there's still a ton of opportunity, but we have some really good news. Gartner's recent research showed that a greater number of women are in the C-suite than they have been before. 26% versus 19% the previous year of women are occupying roles like Chief Supply Chain Officer, SVP, EVP, Chief Procurement Officer. 26% of the women in our industry are occupying those roles now. Good for supply chain. Good for supply chain. So I run probably more than a dozen women's events in my career, and never do we see a turnout of men at events like we do at Manifest. So I have to say it again, because if we don't have men in the room, it's pointless for a bunch of women to be talking to each other. Men are so valuable to getting us all ahead, and your experiences and anything you have to share is only gonna lend to the conversation today. So if you're a man and you have something you wanna share, when we do the Q&A, please come up to the microphone. I encourage anyone to come up to the microphone. Okay, so before I go any further, I need to thank our sponsors, DHL Supply Chain, FlavorCloud, Supply and Demand Chain Executive, and Food Logistics Magazine. Thank you so much for your sponsorship. And I want to thank Lindsay Kaplan and Rathna Sharad for joining us today. They're going to come out and have a conversation. It's going to be fabulous. And when they're done, I'm going to come back out. We're going to take questions from the audience. Okay, so very quick background on myself. I've been running events for more than 30 years, and I've made it my mission to mentor and sponsor women. About 8 years ago, I joined the board of SISO, which is the Society of Independent Show Organizers, and a comment had come up that it's so funny, at the CEO Summit, there's so few women speaking, and it was one of those moments of, well, of course, because there's very few women in the C-suite in the events industry, as odd as it sounds, but it was the truth. About 12% in the C-suite in the events industry when I started running events for women 8 years ago. It has risen since then, but it's still quite low considering the event industry is comprised of about 65% women. So, as I said before, one of the major things I learned was that companies with women in leadership, and specifically in the C-suite, have better stock prices, they have stronger growth, their revenues are higher. It truly does pay to pursue diversity. So, I've learned so many things through all these years of running women's events, from my own research I've conducted, amazing speakers that I've seen, and I'm gonna give you my 5 words of advice from all those years of learning. But first I wanna mention a few people who are in the room today who are also big supporters of women and trying very hard to elevate women in our industry. One of them is Marina Mayer. She does an amazing top women in supply chain list every year. I think it's the 3rd year in a row that that's happened. They are also running a women's event that happens in November of every year. I took part in the event, the last one that happened last November. Fabulous. It's going to be growing, I guarantee it. Such a great event. Sarah Barnes-Humphrey is here. She's got her Women in Supply Chain series. Yeah, Sarah, Blended Pledge. Blended Pledge will be a sponsor of this event next year. Two of my favorite podcasters, Blythe Broomleaf, Grace Sharkey, great supporters of women. I'm sure there's more. These are the notable ones I'm going to mention today. Okay, so some advice before we go on to our speakers. Number one, interruptions and microaggressions. You've all heard of these things, right? Well, men interrupt women 33% more than they interrupt men. On the Supreme Court in 2015, with 3 female members of the court, 66% of the interruptions were made when the female judges were speaking. And these were female judges who had a ton of experience. So it showed that gender on the court has shown to be 30 times more influential than seniority. You can be a senior woman, you're still gonna get interrupted 66% more than your male counterparts. Men, think about it, maybe. Microaggressions. Interrupting is a form of microaggression. And microaggressions are a form of everyday discrimination that's often rooted in bias. It includes comments or actions, they can be subtle, that are not overtly harmful, but they demean or dismiss the person it's happening to. They signal disrespect, can cause stress, and can negatively impact women's careers and health. I'm going to give you some examples. Years of data have shown that women experience microaggressions at a significantly higher rate than men. They're twice as likely to be mistaken for someone junior, to hear comments on their emotional state or their appearance, and 1.5 more times likely to see someone else get credit for their ideas. It's frustrating. And the microaggressions, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. It's happening every day to women. We need to pay attention to this. As a woman, mentor and sponsor other women. Make it your mission. Find someone in your company, in your community, in your friend group, whoever it is, who you think has talent and promise and could use your guidance, and mentor them. Offer to mentor them. I was having dinner with a friend of my daughter's last week, and she was telling me she's going to start working for a VC in California. I was so excited for her, and I have a lot of connections, and I looked at her and I said, "Can I mentor you?" And she said, "Oh my gosh, that would be so amazing." And I don't think she would have asked me. So I asked her, "Can I mentor you?" So I encourage all of you women in the audience, mentor women as much as you can. And the same thing goes for men. Please make it your mission to mentor and sponsor both men and women. I remember the story of a successful friend who was regaling his daughter with what a great job he did mentoring so many men on the golf course. And the daughter looked at him and said, "Well, where do you mentor the women?" And he was dumbfounded because he had never thought about that. It's easier for men to mentor men. A lot more men do play golf. I was just talking to Samantha Jones, another podcaster, last night, who said, "I'm creating a group of women we're all gonna learn to play golf so we can be on the golf course and talk to the men." So as a man, it may not be as easy to mentor women. I know it's more comfortable mentoring men, but it is so important. So please, like I said about the ladies, find a woman in your company, your industry, your community, and mentor them. Okay, ladies, remember, you know more than you think you do. I would imagine some of you have heard this before, but I think it's important to share. Women will only apply for another job if they think they have 100% of the qualifications. But men will apply for that same job if they have half of the qualifications. So therefore, men are getting ahead more quickly because they're just simply more aggressive. So as a woman, remember, you're better than you think you are. You know more than you think you do. You're more capable than you think you are. So if you see that job that you only have half the qualifications for and you really want it, just go for it, girls. Go for it. Okay, last, but probably the most important, money. I mean, what can we say? It's so important. Salaries are not anywhere near being equal pay for equal work. We just don't see it yet. And according to studies, it's still going to take 100 years or something if it progresses at the rate it's progressing at. That's too long. It's too long. And I have a quick story to tell. I was at the Women in Supply Chain event earlier in November, talking to a pretty prominent man in our industry who is a great supporter of women. And he said to me that he had gone, during annual reviews, he had said to his HR person, I have some women who are being paid less than their male counterparts for the same job, so I'd like to increase their salaries to get them up even with the men. And the female HR person said, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that. That would be too much money to give these women. That was a female HR person. So is there one thing we can all agree on, whether you're a man or a woman, that men and women deserve the same pay for equal work? Period. So if you are in this room and you are in a position to make a change in your company to make sure that the women are getting the equal pay for the equal work, please do it. It matters. Women are just as valuable as men in the same jobs. So let's make it happen. We can do it. I know we can. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. It is now my pleasure to welcome to the stage two incredible powerhouse women with inspirational backgrounds and so much success. Lindsay Kaplan is the co-founder and chief marketing officer of Chief, and Rathna Sharad is the founder and CEO of FlavorCloud. They're going to have a candid conversation one-on-one. And as I said before, when they're finished, I'm going to come back up and join them. And we're going to encourage everyone in the audience, if you like, to come up, share a story, ask a question, whatever you want to say. We've got microphones right here. I know they're a little close to the stage, but don't be scared. And we will call you up once the ladies are done talking. So thank you all so much.
Hi, we're excited to be here. And I'm super excited to chat with Lindsay.
I know, going to be an exciting conversation. Here to talk about our experiences as women leaders. So to kick off, would love to hear about your background, your story. What brought you to the stage today?
Well, I think I've had it's definitely not a linear path getting to entrepreneurship. And I want to hear your story, but mine, I'm from southern India. I grew up in a very large metropolis. I'm one of three girls, so I have two younger sisters. And growing up in southern India, I think girls didn't have the opportunity for education. You did not aspire to have careers or independence, whether financially or otherwise. And it was considered my parents were like, oh, everyone around them was telling them, oh, you have three girls. So that was the societal pressure, if you will. But my parents were fantastic. They were so ahead of the times. They wanted to give us anything the boys can do, you can do. It was education, opportunities. So I feel very lucky. My mom was incredibly creative, artistic. She was a homemaker. And she also became a single mom for the most part because my dad used to work in the Middle East, and we would travel on vacations, or he would come vacation in India. But she wanted to give these opportunities to us because she didn't have access to that. And I think she was so fearless in terms of how she, and that's a quality I aspire to have from her. My dad is one of the most brilliant people I know. He's a computer science engineer, way ahead of the time in terms of robotics, assembly level programming, all of these different things. And my earliest memory was when I was like 4 or 5 years old. He used to work in India and come back home every day. He brought this manual. It was how to build a TV. So he actually built the TV for us, our first TV, and it was incredible. It was a black and white TV.
Wow.
And I was so fascinated because I would pick out, I had these little chores, I would pick ICs so he could solder it on a motherboard, and it was color-coded. And that was my foray into, I wanted to build products, like amazing products. And I think like an engineer. So long story short, I'm a computer science engineer. I graduated from India. all roads kind of led to the US. I wanted to be able to come here. I had admissions in half a dozen schools, but I ended up taking a job because I wanted to pay for my own education, which eventually I went back and did an exec MBA, but much later. And but that first job was in the logistics industry. So I started working for carriers, forwarders, 3PLs, and just loved transportation and supply chain because these were massive business problems, ripe for technology, automation, innovation. So I worked with UPS, DHL in Brussels and Germany, built a lot of the cross-border solutions around the world. And that was Portland, Oregon. Because of family, I moved to Seattle. I wanted to be closer to my sister. And instead of taking a logical transportation role at Amazon, I picked a tiny startup role within Microsoft. I was one of the founding members of the ad platform team. So I got to own the advertiser stack, marketplace, monetization. It was my foray into e-commerce and B2C, which I was fascinated by, helping make the connection between brand and consumer through ads. And during that time, my own personal experience, I shop a lot and from international brands. And that experience was so horrendous that it got me thinking about why my past life didn't translate to a great consumer experience that we were powering at Microsoft. So I quit along with my co-founder, who used to be my developer at Bing Ads, and we started our first company. It was a marketplace that enabled small and medium brands sell internationally. But that jump into, I think, entrepreneurship was a key point where, I was comfortable in the job, but it was this idea I felt best suited to solve and bridge these disparate worlds. Trying and failing is perfectly fine in my book, but I couldn't not give it a shot. And I think I had the luxury of a very supportive husband and also I didn't have to worry about paying the bills, which is an incredible thing, which led me to do that. And that led to us creating a marketplace for over 300 brands. We scaled the marketplace and then found that they loved the back-end anywhere logistics platform that we built. And larger brands started coming to us for the logistics, which led to the creation of FlavorCloud. So it's been an interesting path. FlavorCloud is about 6 years old, and we're a growth stage, cross-border logistics company. But it's been when I think about the threads that has led to decision making, I think one thing is I love large business problems that technology can solve. So that's been a thread through my choices. And then the second thing on the personal side, I will say, is that embracing discomfort, I like to call it. You get too comfortable in something and then you kind of move the needle a bit. You want to continuously grow and learn. So that's been a desire that has kind of led to most of my decisions.
I love that you came back to discomfort, because when you said it earlier, there was a spark in me, because when I'm working, I get kind of itchy. Like I get bored solving a problem, solved it, I'm ready for the next one.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a level of comfort we all have when we are in a great job. We know what we're doing, and great innovation and great business ideas come from feeling that discomfort and saying, I'm going to take a leap, whether it's for your own career or for your company and trying to solve something new.
Yeah, and I also think that, it depends. Maybe there are certain times in your life when that discomfort level is less. You have other things that you focus on, but other times where you want that to be 60% new things, which is an interesting gauge, if you will. So tell me about you. Your journey.
So I'm Lindsay Kaplan, co-founder of Chief. We're a women's executive network. Chief was founded from a really personal place. So I had been VP at a startup, Casper, the mattress company. I was the first employee at Casper running brand and marketing. It was an amazing experience. When I joined, there was 5 co-founders and me. When I left, there was hundreds of people. And it was funny. I started there with the VP title. I was not VP. I mean, there was 6 of us, so they gave me whatever title I wanted. Over the years I worked there, I actually became a vice president. I had a giant budget. I had a huge team. And I had business challenges that I needed to solve. I had a coach. She was great. But what I found was, as you go up the ladder in pretty much any company, you are, as a woman, more and more of an only. And as that happens, you are also expected to be the mentor. And I love mentoring. I will mentor anybody in here. Man, woman, 10 times my age, doesn't matter. I love mentoring. But if you are a busy executive and you are still trying to solve your problems that you're encountering every day, taking on mentoring is another effort. It's another job. And so my co-founder and I thought about the networks that were established in business and how we could develop something specifically for executive women who are, all executive challenges are pretty similar, whether you're a man or a woman, but there's that other layer of stress, pressure, and vulnerability that we wanted to make sure we could create this network for. So that led to Chief. We now have thousands of members across the US.
Amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very proud of what we've grown. We launched in 2019, and it's been quite a journey to connect, support with workshops, peer groups, programming events, and community, this incredible, powerful network of women executives. And our goal is for them to become better leaders, because we know that when women become better leaders, their companies are stronger. It means that they do have more time to give back, to pave the way for others. Because when we talk about women in business, often we talk about women in maybe junior ranks in the organization, which is great. We need to be developing those pipelines.
Yeah.
But again, when women get to the top, we're kind of like, all right, you made it. Great job. Need you to go mentor. And we don't think about that added job that we're giving them and the support that maybe they need separate from what they're receiving in their own boardroom.
Yeah, and women in leadership. I mean, I've had very diverse experiences. Working for carriers and then working for a tech company, corporate environment. It used to be. When you got to leadership, there weren't any women. Certainly when I started in logistics, there weren't a lot of women. It's so great to see so many here. Now I think the industry has changed, but it was the same thing in tech. Always the only woman leader in the room. So really looking at role models is what's been hard. So even as an entrepreneur, looking ahead, who are these founders that you want to look up to that are few steps or many steps ahead, that have exited companies and gone public, and who are they? That's just such a small set of folks.
It's a small set of folks, and we put a lot of pressure on them. Yeah. So we often see the rise and fall of women founders. Yeah. Leave women founders alone. It's really hard. It's hard to be a founder. Yeah. So I think it's not just about that small set of women. It's about acknowledging all of the leaders who are, if they're not at the very top, they're around the top, and the support that they need as well.
Yeah.
But I want to hear from you. When you think about role models you've had, what has been some of the best advice you've gotten, but also the worst? Because I feel like you can't have the best without the worst advice.
You mean in terms of finding mentors?
Advice you've gotten from mentors?
Yeah, so I'd say to this point, we were talking about, role models. I think there's been I've been lucky to have so many amazing women that are very many steps ahead, and they've helped along the way. And so have men. I mean, there have been some incredible mentors, startup founders that have helped me along the way. And I think networking is one of those really unique things that men can do for you. I want to help the next generation of women founders. We need more women founding companies. So, mainstream industries, really any industry, certainly generative AI and all of these new LLMs and the next, wave of innovation. I want to see women start these companies. But I think what we lack is really the networking, because men have that, and they can open the doors to the networks. We can support women, and I've had the support of many women getting here as well. But the men have the network, and I think that's been the most valuable advice and what has helped me along the way. There's plenty of bad advice.
We don't need to cover all the bad advice.
Yeah.
Well, I think networking is conferences like this are fantastic because we see so much representation. There are so many conversations that can spark amongst different types of people from all over the country. And we know that networking is a huge part of business success, of company innovation, that exchange of ideas. So it's good on a personal level for your career, but it's also incredibly helpful for your business as you're connecting, networking, and just syncing ideas with other people.
Yeah, and then really working hard on diversity, right? I mean, we want to change the ratios. To me, products, 80% of buying decisions are actually made by women, so it's skewed the other way. But you want to be part of creating these products and technologies. You want diverse opinions, really. And gender is one of those, it's 50-50. It should not be an issue, but it is.
But I know you have a story when you were raising that gender played a role specifically when you were fundraising.
It was one of the early meetings that I had, and it was around a seed raise. My co-founder and I, he's the CTO, and we walked into this room, and this was for the prior marketplace. And I did this presentation. We walked through the business, the vision, the metrics, and all of that, and then I got done. And the first question I got was, do you have kids? And I was a little taken aback by that question. I don't have kids, but my co-founder had just had a baby, a couple months before. So I said, I don't, but he does. And I was a little taken aback, because is that a good thing that I don't have kids, or is that, what about all these other amazing women founders? They have kids, they're running companies, and they're doing all these things. Is this a positive for me? Or is it that they're worried that I'm going to go have a baby and that somehow is an issue? Because paternity, maternity, it's contribution to the same, everybody should be contributing in the same vein. And it's not viewed that way. So, I have all these women founders that I can empathize with. They've been doing all of it, and they do a great job at it.
Yeah, it seems like everybody has one of those stories about, one of those encounters. I would say for me, when my co-founder and I were raising, we were trying to hire a lawyer, meaning we were going to pay him to represent us. Yeah. And he was like, no, girls, I can't take your money. This company is not going to be anything. By the way, we have $1 billion valuation now, so it did become something. And he was like, I'm not going to work with you. We're trying to pay you. We're not asking for money. Yeah. And it was it was a little demeaning.
Yeah.
And I think back to that conversation, and for me, it fueled just a big fire.
Yeah.
I love when I get a no. I love these stories because I like the discomfort,
Yeah.
and I like proving people wrong. And I think some of the best innovators, whether it's somebody inside corporate or an entrepreneur, has that fire and tenacity to prove people wrong.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's different aspects of, as entrepreneurs, we see different things, but just in regular corporate environment, when you think about leadership and when you think about paving that path to wherever you want to go, it's the same challenges as well.
What challenges have you seen in the last 6 months that are maybe, new? I feel like since the pandemic, maybe the last 2 election cycles, there's just been a lot of volatility.
Mm-hmm.
What recently have you seen that's been notable?
I think interesting reset in valuations and how companies are viewed. I actually look at that as a positive, because I think as women, you don't have access to, nobody's writing big checks just based on pattern matching. It is a very different world when you are a female founder. And it's good to look at unit economics and profitability and all the things that we're forced to do, which we've been doing from day one, are suddenly important.
Yeah, I think what's been interesting on my side is we're seeing a lot of the conversation around DEI has waned as the economy shifted. And it's interesting to see a lot of companies that cared so much about representation are now thinking about profitability.
Yeah.
When in fact, representation, inclusion, those practices often lead to better corporate outcomes. So I think that's been an interesting dynamic over the last 6 months. Over the last
Do you also
year.
see that with mentorship?
I think mentorship is something that has always been important on a corporate level as we think about engaging younger folks. How do we make sure that people in the organization who are those rising stars can get access as they climb through the ranks? What I haven't seen, and where I think there's some really great opportunity, is how is that formalized into a better process that scales? Right now, mentorship is something that feels very one-to-one. To find that individual, you have to make sure that they're getting the attention, the advice they need. I think there's some opportunity for scaling that. Again, when I think about women who are mentoring, one of the questions I always get is, how can I mentor at scale? Like, there's 300 women I'd love to mentor. How can I do that easily? I think there's an amazing opportunity for us to be able to do that soon.
Okay, now it is time to hear from the audience. So please, someone step up to a microphone.
Yes. My name is Alexandra. I work for Maersk, and I have also a podcast about female empowerment, so I have a lot of questions. I can interview you for an hour probably. But my question today is, what is the most surprising moment of your career so far?
Most surprising moment in our careers?
Well, I didn't start my career thinking I was going to be an entrepreneur. So, I started in book publishing, went into magazines. So I think for me, it was a surprise to be a co-founder. My path led me there, but I don't think I had ever anticipated, even when I co-founded my company, growing Chief into a place that would be, over 10,000 members and achieving that $1 billion valuation. So I'm proud of what we achieved, but I still feel very surprised that I was able to. It's not imposter syndrome. I don't believe in imposter syndrome, but I certainly did not plan on that.
Yeah. For me, I think it is being an entrepreneur. I don't think I started out thinking I would be one. It is more the journey that got me here.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa. I'm with the Georgia Department of Economic Development. My question is, in each of y'all's experience, has there been someone that was at first an adversary and then through relationship became a champion for you? And I'm asking because I'm wondering if there's some practical ideas or things that you did, not to forcefully change that attitude, but you could see, oh, now they're for me instead of against me. So thank you very much.
Okay, I'll take that first. I would say absolutely. There's been a number of times in my career where there was, if not someone who is ahead of me in the company, a peer or someone who I could tell they didn't like me or something was going on there. And I found the way to deal with that often is just to really make friends with the person and try to spend time with them, try to build a relationship with them, try to show them your value through killing them with kindness. I mean, I just feel sometimes you have to show people that really good side of yourself. In addition to working hard, obviously hard work isn't always recognized, unfortunately. And sometimes building the relationship is the only way to get someone in your corner, I believe.
Melissa, thank you for your question. I love that question because I mentioned earlier, I get fueled by people who say no. So I like adversarial relationships. I think some of my best, most creative, innovative business decisions were born out of like my competitive spirit. And I actually appreciate and love the people that I started out more kind of fighting, for lack of a better term, fighting with. And when you can turn that relationship into something that you recognize, we're competing, this is uncomfortable, but ultimately we're both growing. It's like a tough workout, but we're both building muscle here. I think that can be the most positive relationship you can build in business.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's many instances. I can think of one where I was at Microsoft, I was on the engineering, the technical product development side of things. And we had this really interesting relationship with the business and the marketing side. I actually moved over from the technical side. After about 3 years, I moved to the business side and built the product management organization and really brought about a complete change in how we viewed voice of the customer and brought the teams together. And we were super close-knit after that with everyone on the other side, waiting to help us.
Hi, hello. Thank you so much for all your words of advice and inputs. My name is Sofia Rivas, and my question is, I think like from the uncomfortable stories we have heard, we all kind of agree that we have found a woman that has pushed us down in our lives. So what are we doing to be more like sisters and take care of each other and lift each other up instead of just pushing us down?
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I think a lot of women have learned behaviors. If you see one woman in leadership, you think, whether you're conscious of it or not, you think, well, like, there's only room for one. Therefore, I'm going to have pointy elbows and I'm going to be competitive. I don't need to network and be buddy-buddy with the other women. And I remember I had an amazing job where I was the VP, my colleague was the VP, and she and I were so friendly, and yet there was this tension and competitive nature with us. And it was because we didn't see any women ahead of us. So I think we all have to recognize that it's a symptom of what we see. It's not built into the inherent nature of women to be, rude to each other. And we need to make sure that we're supporting and championing each other and paving the way. Women who are in leadership positions, we need to pave the way for others to make sure that they can join us. Open the doors, bring women with us, invite people into meetings. There are tangible ways that you can do that every single day. And men, you too. We all know that. Like, open the door, invite people in, and make sure that you're putting effort into just building an inclusive environment.
Hello, how are you guys? Thank you so much for everything that you've said. It's been very insightful. I'm Christina. I'm with DSV Global Transport. And my question is, how do you handle a hostile room? Because we're really grateful to have all the men here, right? But I think we've all been in a hostile room with leadership perhaps not being able to take you seriously, for lack of a better term. So maybe not aggressively hostile, but what are some practical tips that you would say as we are moving, up through leadership and able to create more space? How do we not throw everything up and walk out, basically? What are some coping mechanisms and some key phrases that you found to de-escalate, to show your value and get credit for the projects that you are working on, which is very important as well?
I think, funnily, Lindsay and I were talking about this earlier. It's one of those paradoxes, I think, when you're starting out earlier on in your career, as I did, walking into most rooms, it's usually men in leadership position. There's a certain set of behaviors that you learn to be able to be more assertive. It's not inherent in you, but you develop these qualities, so your voice is heard, you're assertive, you get your, stats, you try 10x harder. All of those things, then when you get to a higher level, let's say, you think about that some and say, should I unlearn this behavior? Because now it's considered, assertive and aggressive and bossy, but you needed to do that to get where you got. And so it's a bit about, I think, reading the room is and I'm still unlearning some of that, because you tend to be boxed more in terms of, oh, you're a woman, you should be more empathetic and soft-spoken and all these things. But those things don't get you in the room in the first place. So it's an interesting paradox, but something to be aware of, I think.
Hello, I'm Rich from Snap Fulfill. First of all, thank you for being an example of what you can do and the potential. I think it's outstanding. Quick question, because I think all of us have worked for bad leaders, good leaders, great leaders. And so you mentioned leadership. So much is based on the people you're working with. But if you think about great leaders and the organization, some of them might be men, what would your message be to those leaders to say, look, if you want to advance, try to do one or two things so the team in this room can take that away. I know, Courtney, you already mentioned, hey, compensation. When you're in those discussions, let's make sure fair is fair, and we're compensating people for outcomes irrespective of gender. But, what would be your one or two pieces of advice for the men in this room so we can support this trajectory?
I think compensation is a really big piece. It is ensuring, one of the things, I actually got this advice from another founder. She implemented that through the various stages of our company, equitable policy around salaries and how it's structured, so that it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you're in that band, you know what you make, and that's what it is. Because sometimes women don't negotiate the same way as men do, and that should not be a reason why you're paid differently. It's for the same role. So that's something that I've done. I think that is something that all companies should do and look at. Certainly that's where you start. The other thing is really having diversity as a core value of the company, right? We are around 40% women in our team, and we strive to have that diversity. It's just diversity in general, diversity of thought, but making sure that we are actually prioritizing that all the way from, do we have diverse candidates in the pipeline? Are we looking hard enough? Because it is going to transform your business and your product. It is actually going to impact the bottom line.
Hi there, Chris Lavoie from Aftership. And first of all, thank you all for being champions of such an important movement. My question's a follow-on Christina's question, actually, on communication and just the discourse that men are celebrated for being so assertive, and when they're aggressive, it's just seen as that's how they do it and they get things done. But when a woman does it, it's viewed very differently. So would love to hear from the panel on how we can be more mindful of that if it is pervasive within our own company culture, and what we can do as leaders to steer us in the right direction.
I think it's just so important to be willing to have the conversation and have it be an open conversation and one that you're not afraid to bring up because, I think there's a lot of companies out there that just aren't even talking about it yet. They're just going along their way, behaving the way they've always behaved because no one has the courage to just stand up and say, we need to talk about this. We need to make it one of our core values. We need to pursue strategies that are going to help us create more diversity. So I just feel like it's all about courage and just bringing it up and making it an open conversation all the time.
I think also awareness is helpful. So there's there's studies that show the way that women versus men are viewed as leaders. Just reading the data is helpful. Right? I don't need to be told, nobody needs to be lectured about it. Just sharing the studies, making sure people are aware that these unconscious biases exist from men and from women is such a helpful first step for us to just be aware that this is innate in the way we show up for one another. It's okay, we're not blaming anybody about it, but the second you're aware of it, you just realize it in conversations at work. Like, I might think this woman is acting bitchy, but she's not. And I know because I just read that study that shows I probably think she's bitchy. That is so helpful. And I think it changes the dialogue from being told what not to do and being treated with the respect of listening, studying, and just kind of learning a little bit more about it.
Hi, we're Ellie and Sarah, and first just want to say thank you for being great sources of inspiration. We actually just raised our pre-seed investment by Y Combinator to start our own company.
Yes, congratulations.
So great inspiration. So we really look up to you guys. So question is around if you've experienced imposter syndrome and how you've dealt with it and just worked through it to really build a successful business.
No, I said before, imposter syndrome doesn't exist.
Yeah, you're not an
It's not
imposter.
real. I'm just kidding.
You're doing great. You're not an imposter. That's it.
Yeah, that's the answer. No, I'm kidding. I would say this. So two things. The first is to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with other people, women, men, doesn't matter, who are doing what you're doing. Because you will find, and we've seen this at Chief, we have these incredible executive women, and once we get them in a room together, they're all like, I'm so stressed about this topic. I don't know what I'm doing. This thing is collapsing. So it's really important for you to be around other people. It's why Y Combinator is a great program, because you're all going through the same stresses. Nobody knows the answers. And once you kind of understand that there's a cohort of people who are dealing with the exact same challenges, it helps to normalize the problems. The second thing is find a way to get support, whether that's coaching, whether that is a peer cohort, because it's helpful to talk through it, not just, understand that other people are going through it, but that you're learning and growing and you're taking all of those inputs that are stressing you out and making you feel like you're an imposter, and you're growing from them, and you're just kind of knocking them down as business challenges. Congratulations and good luck.
Good luck.
That's amazing.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Linda with Rockwell Automation. Thank you for speaking today, and I especially loved your statistics at the beginning. So I'm in the latter part of my career. I'm reaching about 30 years in industry. And if I look at the women that have mentored me previously, they've all retired and left. And as you know, most women in our age group, there's not a lot of women. I've always mentored younger, and I always believe that it's not just a one way. I learn from the younger as well. But I'm finding that my professional bucket is being emptied more than it's being filled. And to your point you mentioned earlier about the, don't stress out the founder. The founder's already got a lot going on. So what are the ways that you fill your professional bucket, or what advice would you have for me to find ways to help fill my professional bucket as the places where I used to go, those people aren't around anymore?
So what was the last part? Sorry.
So a lot of the people that I used to go to for mentorship, the women that I would go to for mentorship, and some of the men as well, they're retiring. They're not in the workforce anymore. And so the people I used to talk to for professional guidance are not there anymore. I do mentor a lot of younger people, and you can always learn from the younger generation, but sometimes you are looking for that person that has the more experience, that's been through things. So what are ways that you fill your professional bucket, or what recommendations would you have for me?
I would say there's always a broad network out there of people, right? And it doesn't matter that I don't think a mentor has to be older than you necessarily, and I think if you just dig into your network in some way, even if you're just going through your LinkedIn and seeing some people that are inspirational to you, whether they're younger than you, older than you, your peer, and connecting with them and aggressively, looking for that mentorship. I do feel sometimes it's just about asking. But that if it's not someone in your company, it's someone in your community, someone in the broader industry, someone you meet at a conference, maybe someone at your table is willing to mentor you, who knows? But I would say look for it wherever you can find it and don't just think it's someone older than you necessarily.
And I'm going to plug Chief, which is a network founded specifically for women who, many of which found that they wanted to refill their buckets. And if not Chief, there are amazing organizations out there, whether they are just industry and verticalized, great organizations, executive orgs. So I would encourage you to find an organization, whether it's local, digital, where you can find other people who are, going through what you're going through, and you can mentor and get that peer mentorship as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. And actually, thank you to Manifest Pam, I believe, who set this up. This is the first women's luncheon I've had the privilege of attending in this space, and it's fantastic. My question is, my name is Dylan. I'm part of a founding team of a startup called Squint, raised our Series A, and increasingly, I'm finding myself in large conversations with a lot of men, as I'm sure a lot of folks here as well. They're VCs in some cases, they're manufacturing sites, and my question to you all is, have you cracked the bro code? How do you find yourself in those conversations, but also how do you fit in?
I got this. No, kidding.
No, take it.
Can I tell you a secret? Sometimes
Please.
I channel this guy I know, Steve, and I literally am like, Lindsay, be Steve. How would Steve sit? And it's kind of a joke, but bros are just people. You're a person. They have a lot more casual nature to them. They sit a little bit more like this, but you can do that. So I think there's a little bit of mirroring, and there's a little bit of just knowing you can be yourself, and don't worry too much about that bro guy you're seeing, because at the end of the day, he just wants to, at the end of the day, this is business. He wants to make a great business deal. And so be yourself. Don't take that too seriously, and just know that if you have great business, good fundamentals, that should be moving the conversation along. But you could always channel Steve.
You can also always...
But I'd also say that you are changing the conversation, you're changing the equation, and so we are part of that change. And so that's amazing. I think, end of the day, it's business, it's people, it's partnerships, it's authenticity, it's all of those things that matter.
You know what? You can also just picture him in his underwear.
That actually makes me more nervous, but I will try it again. Thank you.
Are you picturing everybody in their underwear?
No, I'm not.
Now?
I swear I'm not.
Hi, thank you for your commentary. My name's Cecily. I work with Maersk. So we touched a little bit earlier on a compensation question, or comment rather, the fact that there's still a pay gap between men and women, which is known. There's also a pay gap between ethnic groups within women. So as a women leader, how do I better advocate? For example, if a Caucasian woman makes 77 cents on the dollar that a man makes, a Hispanic woman might make 56 cents on the dollar. So how do I better advocate for some of these ethnic groups while still advocating for my own group?
I think one of the things I talked about was salary structure and transparency around that. I've seen that solve a lot of those diversity problems. I think that's one of those fundamental things that you can do in an organization so that everyone feels a part of the company, understands the structure, and you're not favoring one group versus another.
I would also add, so when we think about diversity and inclusion, there's a big conversation about diversity, which becomes representation at your company. And that's great. But what retention metrics are in place? How are you building an inclusive environment? So some ways to do so are ERGs, employee resource groups, to make sure that people have a shared identity have their own space to have a community. There's thinking through different channels to make sure that obviously I focus on women, but people with an intersectional identity have resources that may be more applicable to them to make sure that they feel stronger, supported. So beyond representation, beyond those numbers of making sure that the pipeline is strong, I would also focus and try to build a culture that talks about retention as well, to build that inclusivity muscle. It's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.